Ladies and gentlemen, pleased to have Senator Roy Blunt on the phone with us. How you doing, sir?
Oh, yeah, Jamie, I'm fine. Actually, I went down yesterday, and to be full disclosure here with Senator McCaskill and virtually everybody else from the Kansas area congressional delegation to be sure that the World War II veterans that were coming in yesterday from Kansas City, 4 busloads of them, were able to get to their memorial, the World War II memorial, and we were glad to see them, and they were glad to see us, and more importantly, that long-planned trip was a trip that allowed them to go to the memorial that's there for them.
So you say that Senator McCaskill was there?
She was. She was.
She
and I both went down. We didn't go together, but we got there about the same time, and Congressman Cleaver and Congressman Graves and Vicki Hartzler, the Kansas delegation.
Yeah.
Wasn't really planned, but I think everybody thought, I'm going to go down there. I know this. I go see these groups anytime I can that are coming into town on these honor flights.
Yeah.
And I didn't even think about it being so extraordinary till I got there and realized, well, everybody has decided that, by golly, today these people are going to get in to see their memorial, and they did. And some reporter asked me, well, what if the park department, the Interior Department, arrests these World War II veterans for trespassing? And I said, surely the Department of Interior is smarter than that.
Yeah, well, I was surprised.
And apparently they were.
I'm surprised Senator McCaskill was there. Her office was closed yesterday. She closed her office.
I don't bring her up being there to try to create any controversy involving her on this issue, because we were in full agreement that veterans should be able to go to their memorial.
Yeah, well, it's too bad you can't be in full agreement over Obamacare, because I know that their little note, because we pointed out yesterday, it's interesting that your office was open and the Senator McCaskill's office was closed because of the government shutdown. I found that unusual, but another example of how the Democrats are utilizing not only World War II veterans, but also cancer patients and everybody else to trot out and continue to victimize just for a PR play.
Well, I decided that particularly with the government closed down, even no matter what happens regarding anything else in terms of pay for our staff that's working, which we'll figure out how to do that eventually, I'm sure. But more importantly, people don't have anybody to call. If somebody's Social Security check doesn't get there or something else that they're trying to find out, and sometimes it's a problem we can solve. Sometimes we can help them figure out exactly when to solve it and put that on the list of things that we'll be joining them to solve when the government is open again. And the interesting thing on paper after paper, however, on October 1st was one headline was government shut down. The other headline was Obamacare launches. And what we're going to see, what you and I have talked about so many times, are the unintended consequences of when the government tries to make people do something that so many employers and others have for years been doing their best to do at whatever level they could. Suddenly, part-time work becomes something that employers have to look at, and staying under 50 becomes something that employers have to look at. And a bunch of employers, big and little, who have in the past helped with spouses' health care, saying, well, we're not going to help with that anymore. So families will be on this exchange that up until now had been on the health care plan at the work for either the mom or the dad, and it's going to have some devastating impacts on our economy.
Senator Blunt,
But the president's not going to give it up. I mean, we do know that. The president's not going to sign a bill that would abolish what he considers his signature achievement, no matter how many difficulties that signature achievement creates for American families.
Right, but it appears, though, that it looks to me like Republicans still have the upper hand here in terms of the negotiations, and at some point, once we get to the debt ceiling argument, the president, if it's not an abolishment, there has to be at some point some crippling of it, and I think the president will acquiesce to some changes in Obamacare.
I think the greatest vulnerability they have is this penalty for individuals when you're not going to penalize corporations and businesses for providing health. he's given them a 1-year extension. I said this on the floor of the Senate on Tuesday. How can you possibly justify giving corporations and businesses a 1-year pass that says you don't have to provide health insurance? There'll be no penalty if you don't provide health insurance, but individuals still have a penalty if they don't have health insurance. I think that's one, and I've thought from the very start that was their weakest negotiating point is continuing to penalize individuals while giving a benefit to corporations and businesses. This is a parallel universe.
Senator Blunt, when it comes to what I heard about a lunch meeting that was had with Senator Cruz, and apparently at that lunch meeting he got an earful from fellow Republicans about this tactic, and they were screaming at him about this shutdown and how this is blowing back on Republicans, even though it doesn't appear to really be, except in the media. But were you at that lunch?
I was at that lunch, and we have that lunch every week. And frankly, I'm going to talk to my colleagues in the next couple of days and talk about how important it is that things we say to each other aren't repeated and aren't discussed, whether it's strategy or discussing somebody else's view of an issue. It's not helpful. It doesn't build a team, expecting the president to totally defund his Obamacare would be like expecting a Republican president, a Democrat Congress, saying to a Republican president, we're going to shut the government down unless you reverse all of the recent tax cuts. No Republican president's going to do that. So I never thought this was a plan that would work, but I understand the motivation that people are appropriately concerned about this health care plan that won't work. Being motivated to want to do something about that, even if your plan may not meet my standards of a plan that could work, doesn't mean that there's anything wrong. It'd be like somebody sees somebody drowning and they can't swim, but they're still motivated to jump in and see what they can do. That's a plan that's unlikely to be successful, but that doesn't mean that the person that jumped in wasn't trying to do the right thing.
Right. So you weren't among those yelling at him?
I was not. And yelling would be, I don't like to talk about it, but there was no yelling. But there was whatever you read might be accurate, of the free exchange of opinions. And certainly United States senators and all Americans have a right to have a free exchange of opinions.
Right. Now, yeah, because in the end, and I'm glad you gave that to Senator Cruz in terms of saying that, it doesn't, just because it might not happen doesn't mean you don't try. Because in the end, I think, as Rand Paul stated earlier and we talked about last week, I think the effort here was to kind of sue high and hope to get a little bit as a result and get somebody to the negotiating table. And so far, that could work. I mean, it appears that that it's not a foregone conclusion that the president is not going to come to the negotiating table in one form or another, whether it be through his emissaries in the Senate or himself.
Well, somebody has to go. The president needs to lead. The president, more than anybody else, is in a position to lead to a conclusion of what can happen. More than anybody else, the president can look at what the president wants to accomplish and has the ability to figure out, okay, if everything I'd like to do, what's really doable? The problem with the federal government right now, starting with the president, Harry Reid, others, is that everybody would rather have nothing as not have everything their way, and that's just not the way democracy works.
Yeah, I mean, because in the end, it looks to me, would you support, let me ask you this, would you support this so-called clean CR? Now, I think the word clean is an editorial word, because to me, a clean CR has the defunding of Obamacare in it. But would you vote for a clean CR if it was presented to you?
I don't think so. A continuing resolution, that's what we're at the Budget Control Act spending levels is in fact a victory for us, because that's not what the president wants to do at all. They want to spend $70 billion more dollars this year than Republicans want to spend. And I want to spend. Part of what we need to do here is save the two legislative victories we had. One was permanent tax law. That's pretty much what Republicans worked for in 2001 and 3.
Right.
And two is the Budget Control Act that saves $1 trillion over 10 years. I guarantee you the president does not want to save that $1 trillion. So it's partly what that all looks like.
Senator Blunt, we appreciate you being on with us, and thank you again for being down there for the veterans. And hang tough, will you please?
I am going to do exactly that, and you keep doing what you're doing, and thanks to you for doing it.
All right, Senator Roy Blunt, you can follow
See
him
you soon, buddy.
Okay, buddy. At Roy Blunt.